The maester's raven had not yet stretched its wings toward the frosted sky when Theon Greyjoy pressed his palm to the ancient weirwood door and stepped alone into the godswood. Dawn was little more than a bruised purple stain over Winterfell's eastern ramparts, and a fine veil of rime glittered on every branch, each blade of grass, every stone, as though the very castle had been dipped in diamond dust. It was quiet, peaceful in the way that only a place just woken can be. And yet the hush thrummed with the weight of the moment, the enormity of the thing he had done. He had fallen asleep in his armor, and woken to the smell of wood smoke, and the distant ring of iron against iron, the day's first drills beginning in the yard. A strange calm gripped him now, as if the castle itself had accepted his claim overnight. The moon-pale face carved into the heart tree regarded him with blind scrutiny. He allowed himself a single breath, slow, deliberate, and tasting of pine and snow melt, before he knelt. The frosted grass cracked beneath his knees. "Father," he whispered, though he did not mean Balon of Pike, nor the drowned god of the Iron Islands. He spoke to the north itself, to the old blood whose roots twisted beneath the walls, whose memories lingered in the stones. 13 years a hostage, a ward, a half-forgotten son of two worlds, and now Lord of Winterfell, in truth, if not in name. The thought should have tasted like victory, yet it stung like salt in a fresh wound, for he could almost feel the eyes of Eddard Stark upon him, disappointed, perhaps sorrowful. He rose before the frost could leach the warmth from his marrow. In the bailey, axes clacked against shields, as ironborn reavers drilled beside a handful of Winterfell's garrison who had bent the knee after the taking. Reek lingered at the stairway that climbed the outer wall, his ragged furs plastered to his narrow shoulders. Theon caught the reek of him even in the brittle air, stale hay, old sweat, and something sour but grimaced only inwardly. "My lord," the creature croaked, teeth chattering. "Sir Roderick's head. Crows be at it." "Set archers along the walls to drive the birds away," Theon commanded. "Have his head cleaned, tarred, and mounted atop the gatehouse. Winterfell will remember the price of defiance." Reek bowed with an awkward shuffle. When he was gone, Theon climbed the sandstone steps to the battlements. From there he could see the great keep rising like a squat giant, its slate roof slick with dew. Smoke braided skyward from half a dozen chimneys. Beyond the walls sprawled the leaf-bare fields of the winter town, its cottages and workshops still heavy with silence. Already, his banners snapped above every tower, the golden kraken upon a seaweed-green field. Below, in the training yard, his men took heart from their new home. Black Lauren shouted time and measure, the veteran's voice rasping like iron on stone. Others hauled timber to reinforce the gatehouse. Each hammerfall echoed down the corridors of memory, binding Theon's resolve. Yet he understood well that a castle was not won merely by seizing its towers. It must be held, and holding required more than iron courage. It demanded roots, alliances, legitimacy, fear. He had only 60 ironborn and perhaps 20 Stark men left alive to keep. Worse, word must already be traveling. Ravens winging toward the frays at the Twins, to Robb's camp at River Run, to the Dreadfort and White Harbor, where men of the North still raised the direwolf with proud hearts. As morning ripened, Theon convened his captains in the great hall beneath the high vaulted rafters, where the last embers of the night's hearth glowed sullenly. The carved direwolves on the stone seat, flanking the long table, seemed to watch him with permanent snarl, yet he seated himself without hesitation at their accustomed place, the Lord's place. Lauren arrived first, helm tucked beneath one arm, his black beard peppered with frost. "The walls were sound, but the gate's a wooden maw," he said, claiming a stool. "We burn it, or we bar it. Might do to hang a portcullis if we can wrest enough iron from the smithy." "Do it," Theon answered. "And double patrols on the outer wall after dusk. No man pisses from a parapet without my leave." Lorsch the whale folded his thick arms, leaning upon the long table. "Supplies, my lord. Winterfell's larders are not endless, and your kraken men eat like sharks." "Banter. We levy from the winter town," Theon said. "Tithes of grain, goat, ale. 10%. 10? Ironborn do not tithe. We take, lad." We rule now, Theon snapped. And ruling means leaving something behind for tomorrow. Else tomorrow brings knives at our backs. 10 and no more. None will starve. Whale grunted but said no further word. Pale hair drifting around her shoulders like threads of moonlight. Kyra the Salt Wife slunk in next. Saber, at her hip. She draped herself atop a bench, boots upon the table edge. If we stay, thrice the garrison we need, she said. Robb Stark marches from the south, Stannis from Dragonstone, and Lord Bolton. She let the thought trail off, like a knife left half drawn from the sheath. Theon's jaw tightened. Bolton will bleed before he bends. We'll speak more of him later. He rapped knuckles on the oak board. I know what threatens us. That's why I've sent ravens. At this, the captains exchanged wary glances, even as the great hall's doors swung open anew. Dagmar Cleftjaw strode in like a storm. Scarred lips peeled into what passed for a grin. You mean for the old squid to march north? He said, the words thick with salt and laughter. Balon Greyjoy, Lord of the Isles, King of Salt and Rock, sailing rivers to hold a pile o' snow? A hush fell. Dagmar alone could mock Balon in Theon's presence and keep his head. Theon met the old raider's mismatched eyes with embers of amusement. Not Balon, he said. Asha, Dart. That drew murmurs. Kyra's grin spread. Your sister longs for crowns. She longs for glory, Theon replied. And there's glory here. I've offered her half the North's grain stores, 10,000 head of cattle come spring, and first pick of Manderley's trade ships when White Harbor falls. Nender son. And when the North's wolves come howling, Dagmar asked, then they'll find Krakens waited months for them, dug in deeper than leeches. Winterfell's walls have stood 8,000 years. Let them try. He spoke with more certainty than he felt, yet even doubt could become armor if hammered strongly enough. Theon rose. You have your orders. Before the snows settle for good, we must see Winterfell ready. Go. They filed out. Dagmar lingered, his gaze appraising the younger man. You've teeth now, boy, he rasped softly. But keep one eye open when you sleep. Wolves are quiet in the snow. Theon waited until the echo of footsteps faded, then turned to the hearth. Amid glowing coals sat a flagon of mulled wine. He poured a measure, the spice steam curling beneath his nose. He sipped, and for a heartbeat he tasted his childhood by the same fire. Bran laughing as Arya tried to balance on one foot atop the pelt rug, Robb's arm flung companionably round his shoulder. Iron-warm shame bloomed unwanted under his breastplate. He set the cup aside untasted. Nandi. The day wore on beneath a wan sun. In the yard, the Smith Micken hammered horseshoes for Mount Theon would have preferred as destriers, but Ironborn rode few war horses. Instead, he kept the remaining Stark chargers stabled, meant for sudden sorties. Inside the keep's high-windowed library he found Maester Luwin bound to a chair, wrists roped and lips thin with contempt. Maester, Theon greeted, pacing the dust-moted light. You will write letters. I will write truth, Luwin replied. His grain chain clinked against the chair back. Write my words or lose more chain than pride. Theon produced parchment. To Lady Hornwood, Lady Donella, our loyal neighbor to the east, acknowledge that Winterfell stands firm, under Lord Theon Greyjoy's protection, and in return her lands shall be safeguarded from reavers. Offer trade, salt fish, iron, and timber for her grain and draft horses. Luwin's quill scratched reluctantly. Theon dictated missives for Deepwood Motte, for Barrowton, for petty lords whose minor ties he could pluck like harp strings. Some would scoff, some would feign agreement, but even pretended loyalty sowed division among Robb's bannermen. Outside, an auburn column of smoke unfurled behind the first keep. The pyre where Theon burned the fallen, Ironborn and Northmen alike. The smell of char and pine resin drifted on a late morning breeze. Snowflakes spiraled on that wind, sparse and curious, heralds of the longer winter yet to come. By nightfall, he stood atop the broken tower's jagged crown, looking down upon flickering torches. The evening watch walked the walls, crossbows slung at shoulders. Beyond the gates, the winter town stirred with forced commerce. High piles of chopped wood, sacks of oats, barrels of pickled herring. Some small folk spat as Ironborn passed. One or two darted down alleys clutching knives. But they paid the tithe, hating and fearing in equal measure, and Theon decided fear would keep them honest until he could seed new loyalty. A frigid gust whipped his cloak as he traced the horizon. Black silhouettes of trees serrated the dusky line. Somewhere out there, Bolton's bastard sharpened flaying knives. Robb Stark perhaps read the news in silence, the paper trembling in his fury. The thought knotted Theon's stomach. He descended spiral stairs lit by guttering torches, passing silent suits of armor whose hollow eyes gleamed. Deep in the crypt corridor he walked, guided by instinct more than desire. The carved direwolves snarled atop sarcophagi, older than history. He paused before the statue of Eddard Stark, candlelight pooling like sorrow at its stone feet. "You would have forgiven me," he muttered into the chilly air. "Or would you?" His footsteps echoed back alone. "And now, and days stretched into weeks. Theon's measures became routine. Each dawn commenced with inspection of the walls, followed by council. Midday drills thundered through the yard. Evening saw him ride the perimeter with a score of reavers to remind the winter town of his vigilance. Taxes collected stocked larders until barrels bulged. Work crews under Whale installed a wrought iron portcullis, scavenged from the broken inner gate. Lauren's lash kept them swift. Rumors filtered through captive ravens. Stannis Baratheon besieged at Blackwater, Robb Stark beset by Tywin Lannister's countermarch, and Roose Bolton mysteriously summoned southward by the Boy King at Harrenhal. Fortune twisted like a kraken's tentacle, drawing the world into Theon's clutch. Yet the greatest boon arrived on the crest of a cold gray dawn when the watch cried sighting of sails upon the White Knife. Asha's longship slithered upriver beneath banners of kraken and moon sigil. Their black prows parted mist like knives through silk. Theon rode out to meet her column, his horse's hooves tossing clods upon the muddy river road. When sister and brother clasped forearms, their armor clanged proudly. "Little brother," she said, eyes alight as flint upon steel. "You've stolen a kingdom." "I've borrowed it," he answered, smiling. Asha's gaze swept the ramparts rising beyond frost-white fields. "Then let us invest in its security." She brought 200 veteran reavers, archers hardened by raiding Stoneway ports, shield breakers who had boarded Lannister galleys off Fair Isle, skinners from lonely Saltcliff. More. She brought 20 Manderley merchant ships captured in the Bight, laden with barley, smoked mackerel, and hogsheads of sweet arbor red. Winterfell's yards, once paved in silence, now rang with Ironborn boasts and Northman mutters. Tension simmered, but Theon interceded, breaking fights with a glare, promising coin for discipline. He billeted Asha's men gently, by Ironborn measure, granting them the half-ruined towers to live in, leaving the great keep to his own. Night after night, the siblings drank by the great hearth, plotting. Maps unfurled upon the long table marked holdfasts, with tokens carved of weirwood and driftwood. Asha favored lightning strikes on deepwood motte, but Theon argued for alliances first. "Lady Sabella of Barrowton lost all 3 sons at the Green Fork," he said, sliding a driftwood kraken toward the lonely hills. "She needs protection and justice. Offer her both. She'll bend." "And if she won't?" Asha asked. "Then her small folk will, once they see we keep them fed while Robb fights far away." "Darity." She spat wine. "We take. That is our way." "Our way," he corrected softly. "But the North is stubborn. They'll burn their own crops before they feed us. We must be clever as we are cruel." In the flicker of firelight, Asha's smile sharpened. "You would rule them as a Stark. I would rule them as Theon Greyjoy. And Theon Greyjoy knows what it is to be ruled by both Kraken and Wolf." Enderancho. Snow fell heavier with each passing week, thick flakes that cloaked the world in silence. Watchfires guttered under white blankets. Yet Winterfell thrived in its uneasy peace. The training yard now echoed with Ironborn shield beats matched to northern war horns, an odd duet that rattled the windows of the great keep. Merchant caravans, coaxed by promise of gold and safety, began to return. A silver-haired woman from White Harbor brought barrels of wintergreens pickled in vinegar. A Carhold fur trader offered heavy pelts in exchange for iron weapons. A wandering septon preached the Seven's mercy under Theon's leery indulgence. With each transaction, Theon recorded ledgers, balancing greed against goodwill, teaching his captains that dominion could be measured in more than loot. Some nights he walked alone along the battlements. He would pause above the gatehouse where Sir Roderick's tarred head still leered, beard stiff with frost. He hated the sight now, once deterrent, now a reminder that every harsh act must wear a second face in time. Yesterday's victory, tomorrow's specter. One such evening, under a sky crawling with green curtains of aurora, Asha joined him. She leaned upon the crenelle, pale hair whipping in the cold wind. "You have made them meek," she said. "I have made them mine." She studied him. Balin grows impatient. He demands results he can see. The fall of White Harbor, the sacking of barrow tombs, tokens to brand upon the world. Theon's breath fogged the air. "Does father send his blessing?" She shrugged. "He sends silence. Yet silence from Pike is seldom peace. It is the hush between thunder and wave." Theon turned his gaze outward. In the meadow beyond the moat, moonlight pooled upon snow like spilled milk. "Then let him come see for himself." "Do you fear Robb Stark?" "I fear what he was," Theon replied. "But he is far from here, knee-deep in Lannister blood and Frey intrigue. And every league he rides from Winterfell, I root myself deeper." Asha sighed, then clapped his shoulder. "I sailed north expecting to rescue a brother drowning in wolf-blood dilemmas. Instead I find a lord determined to grow gills." His chuckle froze in a plume. "Stay. Teach me to breathe beneath this tide." And no. With Asha's men doubling the watch, Theon finally dared to push beyond the walls. He led a swift column to Torrhen Square, negotiated parley with Lady Adara Tallheart. Over hearth-cooked venison, he offered safe trade routes to White Harbor in exchange for timber and oaths. He returned to Winterfell with a promise sealed in wax, the kraken etched beside the Tallheart pines. On his heels rode Lord Wyman Manderley's envoy, drawn by rumor of captured ships and unpaid debts. The man, plump cheeks ruddy from the cold, was feted in the great hall with strong wine and salt pork. Theon agreed to ransom the seized White Harbor ships for gold and grain, but only after Manderley acknowledged the independence of the Iron Islands and Theon's wardenship of the north. The envoy balked. Theon smiled, and Asha's reavers lined the galleries with axes in hand. The envoy grew amenable. Thus the game unfolded, threats veiled as courtesy, hospitality laced with iron. Rivals spoke in whispers of the kraken that had wrapped its tentacles around Winterfell's stones, and would not let go. But whispers cut both ways. Through covert channels, word reached Theon of Roose Bolton's bastard riding north with a company of flayed men, banners fresh dyed in crimson and pink. The bastard Ramsay, it was said, wore a cloak sewn from the skins of girls and laughed as they screamed. He claimed he came to liberate Winterfell for the Stark cause, but the North knew the price of the flayed man's mercy. Theon convened council beneath the high-vaulted beams, fire casting long shadows. "They come," Lauren said. 200 horse and twice as many foot. Flenses and spears. Asha rested one boot on the bench. "Let them batter the gate. We've archers and boiling oil." Dagmar grunted, running scarred fingers through his beard. "Bolton's bastard fights with deceit. He'll torch the winter town to draw us out." Theon tapped the map. "We cannot abandon the people. If Winterfell stands unscathed while every cottage burns, we lose what loyalty we've sown." Kyra tilted her head. "Loyalty? They fear us. Let them fear fire too." "No." Theon's voice cut. "We ride to meet him on ground of our choosing." It was decided. At the Shivering Wood, a narrow glade 2 leagues east, where the forest hemmed close and cavalry could not easily maneuver. They would take 80 Ironborn, 50 Stark sergeants whose loyalty had warmed in Theon's pay, and a dozen tall-hard archers borrowed from Torrhen's Square. Snow fell thick as goose down the morning they marched, muffling hoofbeats and breath alike. Theon wore blackened plate chased in bronze, Kraken's sigil polished to gleam. Asha rode at his side, her smile a sharpened sickle. Behind them trudged their band, shields rimmed with frost. The forest accepted them with looming silence. Fresh snow lay unbroken save for hair tracks and the dim groove of the road. They reached the glade by midday. Fires were lit beneath canvas awnings. Arrow pits dug. Stakes driven. Night fell swift and heavy. On the second dawn, horns wailed from the eastern tree line. Ramsay's vanguard emerged, riders in boiled leather, banners of pink muscle flapping. They halted beyond bowshot, a crimson smear against the white world. Negotiation was offered and refused. Bolton's bastard sent a flayed hand nailed to a spar-row shaft. Theon answered with black-fletched arrows that clattered near Ramsay's destrier. Battle commenced beneath a sky the color of pewter. Theon's archers loosed volleys that hissed like sleet. Bolton men raised shields painted with men flayed alive. Ironborn shields locked ground in a crescent, behind rows of sharpened stakes. Ramsay's horsemen charged thrice and bled thrice, steeds shrieking under arrow-pierced throats. The bastard himself rode the fourth charge, sword flashing pale as moonsteel. He plunged through a gap, hacking left and right, until Dagmar Cleftjaw's axe met his path. Steel ranged it. Dagmar's second blow sheared a chunk from Ramsay's pauldron, and the bastard laughed wild, eyes bright as broken glass. Theon spurred forward, Kraken banner streaming. He caught Ramsay's blade on his own, felt the shock jolt up his arm. Their horses collided flank to flank, hooves skidding in churned snow. Theon wheeled, slashed, drove Ramsay back. In a storm of steel they circled, breath pluming like twins of the same dragon. Then Asha's spear found a gap beneath Ramsay's lifted arm. Blood erupted in a hot, black gust. Ramsay's laugh choked into wet rattle. He toppled from the saddle, scarlet fanning on the snow. His men faltered to see their lord fallen. Ironborn roared, surging. The rout was swift and merciless. When silence returned, the glade lay littered with corpses and broken lances, crimson slush filling hoofprints. Theon dismounted, boots sinking. He stared at the body of the bastard Bolton, face pale, lips purple, eyes frozen open as though still admiring carnage. Theon felt no triumph, only a cold clarity. Winterfell was his indeed, purchased in blood the North would never forget. He ordered the corpse flayed and burned, not out of cruelty, but to deny the Bolton sigil its power. And then he, winter set in earnest. Snowdrifts climbed the walls in ragged waves. Smoke from the chimneys drew straight as spears into the ice-blue sky. Trade slowed, but stores were plentiful. Within those thick stone walls, life assumed a rhythm. Morning drills, midday feasts, evening tales by roaring fires. Theon instituted courts to settle disputes, petty theft, tithes contested, rights of grazing. He judged firm but fair, awarding compensation from plunder seized, and word spread that the Kraken Lord cared for justice. Children of the winter town crept near to watch the Ironborn practice spear forms. Some mimicked the moves with sticks. Mothers brought baskets of rye bread and goat cheese as peace offerings. Theon accepted with practiced modesty, returning coin and salted fish. When the sun climbed higher, come first thaw, Theon stood upon the battlements and surveyed his realm. Snowmelt streamed through gutters, crows cried from the rookery. Somewhere below, a plow creaked through softened soil. Winterfell lived. Under his hand, it lived. A raven beat its wings toward him, landing upon the merlon. A silver cylinder hung from its leg. The seal was waxed with twin towers. House Frey. Theon broke it with thumb, unrolled parchment. The letter spoke of a gathering at the Trident, of peace talks brokered by Lord Walder and King Joffrey, of prisoners exchanged and banners furled. Between the lines, Theon read opportunity. He folded the missive slowly. So long as Robb Stark rode south and Frey plots festered, the North remained without its heart. And what is a wolf pack without the alpha? Vulnerable, leaderless, ripe for a kraken's reign. He sent ravens of his own, carefully worded pledges of neutrality to the Freys, offers of grain to the Lannisters, and whispers of mutual benefit to little lords along the neck. Piece by piece, he constructed a web thicker than any maester's chain, spun of promises, threats, and calculated gifts. Yet something else tugged at him, the land itself. On mild afternoons he rode the Wolf's Wood, pausing to feel the wind that smelled of pine resin and distant sea. He found himself stopping at frozen pools to study his reflection. Did he look ironborn still, or had Stark ice crept into his eyes? Some nights he dreamed of Ned Stark's voice telling him a thing half-remembered, that a good man is not the one who never errs, but the one who faces the tally of his deeds. He awoke from such dreams shivering, though the hearth blazed and Kyra's warm limb draped across his chest. And then, at last, came the long-expected day. A lone rider breaching the tree line, a white direwolf banner limp in windless air. Beneath it rode Mage Mormont, shoulders fur-cloaked, jaw square as any iron anvil. A retinue of 30 shield maidens followed, eyes hard. They asked parley at the gate, and Theon granted it. In the courtyard they faced each other, kraken and bear, amid a hush thick enough to choke. "You have held this castle through darkest winter," Mage said, voice like gravel under hooves. "The North remembers, yet the North also hungers for peace." Theon inclined his head. "Peace I can offer, independence I can guarantee. Bread I can spare." She sniffed. "And what do you ask?" "Allegiance, not to Pike, but to Winterfell, my Winterfell." The wind sighed through broken arrow loops. Somewhere a smith's hammer rang. Mage scratched the gray streak at her temple. "You took this seat with trickery. You killed good men." "I killed to survive a war I did not start," he said softly. "As did you, as has every lord and lady in Westeros. But I am willing to build anew." Silence held. Behind Theon, Asha shifted, hand upon sword. Behind Mage, a bear cloak swayed as ice-coated chainmail clinked. Finally Mage spoke. "The North may accept you, if you prove you are no Bolton, no Lannister whelp in kraken skin. The sons of Stark still live, lost to rumor. Find them, foster them, raise them as brothers, and we will speak again." Theon's breath caught. He remembered Bran's eager smile, Rickon's shrill laughter. Rumors whispered that the boys had escaped when Theon first took the castle, running wild somewhere north. He had sent search parties but found only tangled wolf tracks and empty farmer huts. He bowed his head. "I will search the woods anew, and when I find them, they will have a place of honor beside me. On this, by salt and snow I swear." Meg's eyes narrowed. "Then perhaps you are not the boy who betrayed their father." She turned. "We will watch." The bear banners receded into the wood, leaving Theon staring at fresh snow, churned to mud by their hooves. Asha approached, voice low. "You would share rule with wolf whelps?" "I would share life with them," he answered, and found to his quiet surprise that he meant it. And now, spring sunlight, pale and fragile, eventually kissed the battlements of Winterfell. Crocuses speared through slush in the godswood. The hot springs steamed anew. Theon oversaw the rebuilding of the collapsed library roof, the planting of barley around the moat, the forging of new iron gates. Masons chiseled his sigil beside the direwolf atop the gatehouse. A kraken entwined with wolf, salt clasped by snow. Some nights fires flickered on distant hills as small folk burned winter-dead fields to ready new sowing, and Theon sat high in the broken tower watching the glow, thinking how every flame must fade before the seed can grow. He had become Lord of Winterfell. More, he had become its steward. Not by blood or by right, but by sheer grit and the weaving of iron with mercy. He still carried fear in his gut, for Robb's possible return, for Balon's cold judgment, but fear had ceased to rule him. When strangers approached the gates now, they found sentries in gray cloaks embroidered with kraken sigils, standing alongside men in stark livery, the two ranks mixing greetings, sharing flasks of ale. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Winterfell forgot the day Theon Greyjoy took it by stealth, and remembered instead the seasons he stood sentinel upon its walls, a kraken who learned the language of wolves. And as the first violet buds broke upon the stark branches of the godswood, Theon found himself kneeling again before the heart tree, snow now a memory at his boots. "I hold what I seized," he murmured. "But more, I belong." The face in the bark did not answer, but a raven croaked overhead, feathers glossy in sun. Then the wind stirred, carrying the distant smell of sea salt upon a promise of summer, and Theon Greyjoy rose, certain for the first time that Winterfell's stones would echo his footsteps, long after the waves themselves forgot his name. "Ah! Ha!" The wind off the shivering sea carried still the taste of perilous cold, though winter's deepest bite had slackened its jaws. Dawn broke muted, a pallid strip of pearl across the ramparts, when Theon Greyjoy left the warmth of his bed. Kyra's arm sliding away as if reluctant, donned a cloak sewn of wolf-gray wool, and descended the spiral of the broken tower. In the yard below, morning torches guttered and spat. The air smelled of straw, damp ashes, and the first shy scents of spring. 3 days had passed since Mage Mormont's challenge in the courtyard. 3 days, and the weight of it pressed on Theon's shoulders like chainmail gone sodden. Find the Stark boys, foster them. Prove yourself no flayer's kin. Only then would the great houses speak of more than grudging forbearance. He had lain awake long into the nights, the crackle of hearthfire replacing the memories of Bran's laughter, Rickon's shrill whoops, Ned Stark's measured counsel. At last he ordered a search worthy of a king's ransom. A dozen parties, each led by an ironborn captain paired with a Northman sergeant, ranging as far as Deepwood Motte in the west and the White Knife's headwaters to the east. The foremost hunt set out at sunrise this very morn. Theon watched from the inner gatehouse as the riders assembled. Archers from House Tallheart knocked arrows across their backs. Ironborn shield-breakers bore axes dark with whale oil. Mounts impatiently pawed half-frozen mud-dye tea. At the column's head loomed Dagmar Cleftjaw, astride a roan destrier, armor mottled with patches of new rust. Dagmar disdained scouring his vanity. Beside him rode Bethany Coldwater, a Barrowton scout whose prickling gaze missed little. Between them stood the lean spear of Benfred Tallheart, his wolfskin cloak flung wide like wings. Theon descended to clasp arms with Dagmar. "The wilds are treacherous still," he said. "Snows drift deep beneath the pines. Tracks slow. Burn no beacons after dusk, and return within 8 days whether you find spoor or nothing." Dagmar's one good eye glittered. If the boys breathed north on the neck, we'll sniff 'em. He tapped a finger to the cold iron rivet where the other eye had been. "Even this hole can smell a wolf pup." Bethany Coldwater bowed her head. "We'll swing east round Widow's Watch, my lord. There's talk of a Crannogman elder who's traded furs for saltfish near the bogs. Says he's seen a child riding a great gray beast that walks like a man's shadow." "Menderwide. A deer wolf," Theon murmured, a chill creeping beneath the cloak. "Find that elder. Gain his trust." Benfred saluted smartly. "On my oath." Trumpets moaned. Hooves churned. The gate groaned open. The search party rode into pale light, banners trailing, kraken entangled with wolf. Theon watched until trees swallowed the last flicker of steel. When the chill gnawed his cheeks raw, he turned inward. The great keep's corridors smelled of hot bread and pitch pine. He passed pairs of guards, ironborn and stark men mingled, nodding to each. Many answered with something almost nearing respect. Not so long ago those same men had eyed him as they might a poised viper. Yet a winter of steady meals, fair coin, and judicious justice had softened grudges that steel alone could not. In the solar he found Maester Luwin, quill scratching across parchment, spectacles fogged by the steam of a brazier. The scholar rose as Theon entered, chain collar clinking. "Reports, my lord," Luwin said. "The riders you dispatched to the Greenfield have returned. They found only abandoned trap lines and a ruined crofter's hut. No sign of the boys. Tell me of the crofter's hut. Half collapsed, the maester answered. Snow melted upon the hearth. Tracks of a single direwolf, large by the spacing, leading west toward the King's Road. Summer, Theon thought. Or shaggy dog. Write letters to every holdfast along the King's Road as far south as the neck. Offer safe quarter and 10 silver stags for tidings of gray or black deerwolves in company with boys, and 4 gold dragons if those tidings prove true. Done. Lewin inclined his head, though not without a glimmer of subtle approval. Coin may loose tongues fear could not. Before noon, Theon strode to the smithy, where sparks danced like fireflies. Mikken wiped soot from his brow with a forearm knotty as driftwood. At the lord's approach he straightened, hammer clutched like a scepter. The hinges on the eastern postern seize and thaw. Theon said, strip them, re-oil, and file the pins lest the gate freeze again. He took up a longsword cooling on a rack, its fuller etched with tiny waves. Fine work. Meant for Lady Asha. Should she want a blade less heavy than her current brute? Mikken grinned beneath a beard rhymed with filings. Steel from captured Manderly scythes as you asked. Folded thrice. Deliver it with my compliments, Theon replied, testing the balance. Smooth as poured wine. He pictured Asha's delight at the craftsmanship, and the implicit reminder that Winterfell's forges now served Kraken aims. Afternoon found Theon in council once more. The great hall's rafters hummed with voices, and the crack of splitting logs in the hearth. Asha sprawled on a wolf-hide bench, new sword across her knees. Kyra leaned against a pillar, plaiting threads of rawhide. Lauren shuffled parchment ledgers, while Whale toyed with a carved ivory die. Weeks of stasis, Asha began, blue eyes alight. Robb Stark remained south at River Run, wrangling lords and Lannisters. Yet White Harbor broods. Wyman Manderly has not ratified our trade pact. Too many of his ships seized, too many sons held captive at the Twins. The phrase whisper poison. It is Manderly who must choose, Theon said, fingers steepled. The trade carrot dangles. We show again the stick. Whale, send 2 longships to linger off the mouth of the white knife. Fly no colors. Let the harbor master tremble until he signs. Whale's grin split a scarred lip. Silent watcher's eye. Lauren cleared his throat, parchment fluttering. Stores stand ample. Barley and oats suffice for 3 moons. Salted cod more. But we lack fruit, and scurvy creeps upon men in spring half-fed. Seek dried apples from House Glover. Pay fair, no plundering, Theon decreed. Better coin now than sick men later. Kyra scoffed. You barter like a septa. Health buys loyalty, Theon said. Loyalty buys blades when harpoons fail. Asha tapped her new sword. Talking of blades, Balin sails. Silence thickened. A log popped in the hearth. Sparks spiraled. Ravens came dawn before last. She continued. Father's fleet left Lordsport upon the spring tide. 40 longships plus 2 hammered iron war galleys. Destination unclear, but they ride the northern current. Lauren exhaled through his beard. Pike's weight arrives. Theon's gut tightened, a knot of sea salt in memory. Father had sent no raven, no message borne by any gull or crow. What motive? To chastise a son who presumed beyond his reach, or to crown that same son in spectacle? We prepare reception, he said at length. Hang Kraken banners beside Wolf, light torches, open gates wide. But man the walls all the same, until Balin stands within arm's reach and speaks words plain, we trust nothing. 2 days later, purple dust mottled with storm clouds when the lookouts atop the Hunter's Tower cried sails on the shivering sea. Theon raced the winding stairs. At the summit, wind scoured his cheeks raw. Through a long eye of polished bronze, he spied silhouettes sliding along the horizon. Slim hulls with ribbed sails, knives on a dark platter. He counted 12 only, not Balin's full muster. But one among them he recognized by her twin Kraken and Narwhal pennants. Deepmaw, captained by Coral the Maid, father's favored courier of late. They made upriver before midnight, torches lining their rails, oars silent as owl wings. Theon stood on Winterfell's quay flanked by Asha and a brace of steel-helmed guards. River mist coiled about the dock, wreathing hulls in ghost shapes. Planks thudded. Qarl the maid disembarked, cloak snapping. He swept a theatrical bow. "Prince Theon," Qarl said. "Grin, Quicksilver. Your lord father sends gifts." Grooms took charge of sealed chests, hauled ashore on chains. Qarl produced a rolled parchment, wax stamped with Balin's drowned kraken. Theon cracked seal and read beneath the guttering glow of a torch. The message was brief. Balin's fleet had turned south for Old White to convene a Kingsmoot. An affront to his sovereignty, he railed, yet the captains demanded it. While throne matters churned, Balin commanded Theon to hold Winterfell in kraken name, to bleed the north dry if need be, and to send forth a levy of 200 seasoned men to reinforce the seas around the Cape of Eagles by summer. No praise, no fatherly pride, only orders and the assumption of obedience. Theon felt a flare of mingled resentment and relief. So Balin would not march on Winterfell, yet he saw it only as a fortress to squeeze. Asha read the note over his shoulder, snorted. "He is more barnacle than blood." Qarl cleared his throat, produced a second sealed tube. "From Lord Roderick Harlaw," he said. "Euron's return has unsettled Pike. The Crow's Eye claims the Kingsmoot's favor." "Euron," Theon mused, swallowing uneasily. Of all his uncles, the Crow's Eye soared highest and darkest. Tyrant of storms. And what does Roderick ask? Neutral harbor if Crow's Eye wins. Some whisper you may prove a safer steward of the Isles than either Balin or Euron. Theon's laughter rang brittle as chimes in frost. "I rule Winterfell, not Pike," he said. Yet the seed was sown. He turned to the chests, nodded. Iron hinges screeched as lids rose. Inside lay coils of chainmail black as spilled ink, rivets the color of dried blood, bundles of crossbow mechanisms greased in pork fat, casks of sour black powder smuggled from across the narrow sea, 10 iron-bound tomes of the drowned god's scripture, and gold, more gold than Theon had seen in one place. "Payment," Qarl said softly. "For what father calls your stewardship." Theon gestured for the loot to be catalogued in the treasury. "Tell him I accept, yet must withhold the levy until harvest. Men cannot be spared while search parties scour the woods." Qarl quirked a brow. "Your father spoke little of lost wolf pups." "Then he'll learn," Theon replied. "Leave at dawn, carry my answer." March waned. The hunts reported back. No boys found, though signs abounded. Dagmar's party discovered a cave lined with wolf pelts and dried apricots. Benfred returned blood-splattered but victorious from a skirmish with wildling raiders near Torhen Square. Among their packs lay a carven toy Deary wolf Theon remembered carving for Bran years ago from driftwood. Hope and dread tangled in his chest. Each clue proved the boys lived, yet each day without them risked rumor turning against him. Meanwhile, the winter town stirred to life. Meltwater gurgled in gutters. Black earth showed through slush. Theon decreed a festival on the first clear night of the new moon. Bonfires in the Godswood glade, casks broached, fiddle strings thrumming beside iron-borne drums. Northmen and kraken men danced awkward reels. Children painted kraken tentacles upon direwolf shields in chalk. Theon stood among them in plain wool, flagon in hand, exchanging jests. Skepticism lingered, but laughter too. Toward midnight, the revel quieted to a hush as open-sky singers formed a circle. Asha strode to its center, cloak swirling. She sang an old salt wife's dirge of the sea courting the shore, voice low and fierce. When she bowed away, a stark scullery girl stepped forth, trembling, and answered with a ballad of the lonely kings of winter, her soprano thin but true. Theon listened, heart caught between tides, and felt the moment as a promise. Two peoples woven in song, yet festival fires cast long shadows. In a lonely alley by the northeast wall, Kyra found a bloodied iron-born youth slain, wolf-clawed scratches across his throat. No thief had taken coin. On the corpse tunic, smeared in gore, was scratched a single word: "Remember." Whispers ran hot. Theon doubled the night watch, forbade men to walk the town drunk, and dispatched Lewin with healers to soothe tensions. But fear, once loosed, circles like a hawk. 3 nights later, alarm bells clanged before dawn. Theon leapt from dream to blade in hand. From the ramparts, torches bobbed along the outer wall's base, where fresh snow lay in sinister heaps. 2 guards reported seeing a dire wolf shape, slinking just beyond the stakes, vanishing into gloom. Investigators found paw prints enormous as dinner plates, and beside them, the print of a child's bare foot. Theon stared at the impressions until eyes watered. "They're baiting me," Asha murmured at his elbow. "Or begging help," Theon whispered. He knelt, brushed snow from the tiny footprint. It led toward the wolf's wood, then vanished. He called counsel that very hour. Dagmar counseled caution, a trap to lure their strength thin. Kyra urged hounds to track the pups. Lewin's brow furrowed deep as plowed earth. At last Theon decided. 8 dawn we ride light. Myself, Dagmar, Bethany Coldwater. 4 tall-heart riders, 4 krakens. No banners, no armor save boiled leather. Wolves track silence. Asha frowned. "You leave Winterfell at risk. You command in my stead," he said. "If my gamble fails, light 3 pyres on the walls. I'll see the smoke." Before first light, they departed through the Hunter's Gate. Gray twilight painted the forest, trunks serried like soldiers. Hooves packed hush into thawing earth. Crows gossiped overhead. Snowflakes old and stubborn clung to hollows. They found more prints, wolf and child, weaving deeper northward. Hours passed measured by breath and heartbeat. Dagmar's sore eye watered. Bethany scouted ahead, braid flicking like a whip. At a break by a frozen creek, Theon knelt to drink and glimpsed a glimmer of movement upstream. Slim as a reed, swift as thought. He raised a hand, crossbows leveled. No sign. Yet the air felt charged, a string drawn tight. They pressed on. Dusk-stained treetops rose gold when the prince diverged. Wolf path turned west. Child prince east toward a sandstone ridge riddled with caverns. Bethany spat. "Cave warren. Good ground for ambush." Dagmar cracked knuckles. "We choose? Pup or wolf?" Theon gazed upon sky now marbled with purple. "Split pairs," he ordered. "But stay in earshot. 2 horn blasts if trouble." He and Bethany took the cave path. The stone ridge rose jagged, lichened faces weeping meltwater. They found a narrow cleft hidden behind bramble, stinking faintly of tallow and smoke. Theon squeezed through, torch aloft. The passage widened into a low chamber where charred sticks ringed a cold fire pit, bones scattered within. A child's fur cloak lay cast aside, torn at a seam. "My lord," Bethany whispered, pointing. Against the far wall rested carvings of direwolves etched in soot, little more than child scrawl. Beside them another figure, a man with a kraken's helm, arms spread. Over his chest, a jagged cross had been slashed. "No friend here," Bethany murmured. Horn blasts rang. One, then another. Urgent. Torch in one hand, sword in the other, Theon whirled, ducked through the cleft, sprinted downhill. The second blast came thinner, wheezing Gaisha. They burst onto a snowy slope where 2 riders struggled. Dagmar down on one knee, parrying a rain of strikes from a gaunt wildling wielding twin axes. Another ironborn lay prone, neck blooming crimson. Closer, a great gray direwolf circled Bethany's horse, summer by the golden eyes. The wolf bared fangs but did not leap. Instead, it loped a semicircle, barking hoarse challenge. Through the swirl of confusion, Theon spied movement on a boulder. A boy, lank of limb, hair dark as soaked bark, Bran Stark. He balanced with hand against Summer's flank, good leg quivering, useless legs wrapped in furs, bound by leather straps. Theon's heart thundered so loud he feared deafness. He sheathed blade, raised empty palms. "Bran." Dagmar's opponent pivoted upon hearing the name. The delay let Dagmar cleave the axe arm clean above elbow. Wildling shrieked. Blood sprayed snow. Theon shouted cease. The wildling stumbled back, pale. Bran's eyes, older than a boy of 12. Locked Theon's. An arrow whisked overhead. Bethany, still astride horse, had knocked without command. Theon wheeled, barked, "Hold!" Bethany's jaw flexed. He commands a wolf. He is Lord of Winterfell's blood. Theon stepped forward, though Summer's growl rumbled thunder. "Bran? I have searched." Another figure scrambled from shadows. Mira Reed, spear leveled. Behind her, Jojen's green eyes glimmered, as if seeing truths none else could. Mira hissed, "One step more and Summer feasts on Kraken." Dagmar limped, axe red. He hefted it. Theon flung an arm wide. Weapons down. He fought to slow breath. "Bran, your home awaits." Bran's gaze flicked to the stump of Dagmar's victim, to Bethany's taut bow, to Theon's trembling outstretched hands. In that endless heartbeat, he balanced futures. Summer halted, growl, head tilting. Bran whispered into fur. Wind sighed. "I saw you," the boy said at length, voice like dry leaves. "In dreams of snow and salt, you walked halls in iron skin but wept stone tears." Theon swallowed. "Dream or not, you're needed. The north fractures. Only your presence can mend." Mira's spear tip wavered. Jojen murmured something inaudible. Bran drew a breath. "Swear, Summer safe. By salt and snow, by fire and blood." The words tumbled out raw. "Harm him, and may the weeping lady drown me." Bethany lowered bow. Dagmar grunted assent. Bran's small shoulders sagged. Mira nodded. They made camp in the cave, torches flickering on stone wolves. Theon bound Dagmar's slash with boiled bandages, tended the wildling's severed limb with what poultices Lewin had provided, though the man gibbered in some guttural tongue. Bran watched, silent. Later, as embers glowed, Theon approached him alone. "You remember me," he said, crouching. "Oh, of course." Bran gazed into fire. "You raced Robb on the battlements. Swore you would teach me bowmanship once my arms grew stronger." Theon's throat constricted. "The offer remains." "It is my legs that fail," Bran said without hint of self-pity. "Yet there are other ways to fly." Morning came shrouded in gray mist. They set out for Winterfell. Theon riding slow beside Bran's stretcher sledge, drawn by Bethany's horse. Summer loped flank guard. Mira and Jojen glided like shadows. The wildling captive shuffled, arm stump, swaddled. Snow fell gentle as ash. On the second day, spires of Winterfell pierced haze, banners limp bite. Trumpets on the wall brayed greeting. Word flew swift to every hearth, every byre. Lord Bran has returned. Crowds lined the yard as the party clattered in. Some knelt, others wept outright. Lewin hurried down steps, robes flying, tears streaking cheeks. Asha, arms crossed, regarded the scene with wary amusement. Theon dismounted and lifted Bran into waiting arms of stable hands, then guided sledge to the great hall. The boy's eyes widened at sight of familiar beams. Feasting exploded that night like sunrise. Long tables groaned with venison pies, leek soup, wheels of goat cheese. Ale flowed unabated. Bran sat enthroned beside Theon, Mira at his back. Summer curled beneath his feet, a living stone. Theon rose and held high a horn. "Winterfell's blood is Winterfell's strength," he proclaimed. "Today Kraken and wolf bind closer, as salt weathers snow and snow preserves salt." He swept an arm at silhouettes of Northmen and Ironborn. "Any who seek to sunder us must face the teeth of both." Thunderous cheers mingled with hesitant ones, but all drank. Music soared. Bran smiled a fragile crescent. Hope quickened like sap in thaw. Later, in the quiet of the solar, Theon poured wine for Lewin and Asha. Storm grumbled beyond shutters. "One pup returned," Asha said, swirling her cup. "The youngest still roams." "He'll be found," Theon murmured. "Or he'll find us." Lewin tapped quill against lip. "Already small folk speak of your honor, my lord. Yet word spreads too that Balon demands men. Will you bleed Winterfell to feed Pike's wars?" Theon stared into wine dark as midnight at sea. "No, this castle bled enough." He set cup down. "I will send coin instead. Gold father gifted. Men stay." Asha arched a brow but said nothing. Thunder cracked. In its echo, a horn sounded outside. 3 short blasts. Alarm. Theon sprang, heart hammering. They rushed to the battlements. Lightning scribbled the sky, illuminating a column of riders pounding along the King's Road. Banners sodden but visible. Red field, golden lion rampant. Lannisters. Beneath them another standard twisted, twin towers pale on gray. Frey? Dagmar cursed low. Southfire simmers. In that flash of light, Theon saw the shape of the war to come. Robb entwined in Southron snares, Bolton smoldering beneath the lash of defeat. Frey sniffing new allegiances, and now lions at the doorstep. He turned to Asha, rain streaking her face. Let trumpets summon captains. Winterfell stands one more test. Lightning faded, leaving darkness alive with the drumming of hooves. Theon Greyjoy felt the old thrill of battle kindled anew, but under it fluttered something steadier, warmer. The heartbeat of a home not taken but earned. He drew breath, tasting rain, tasting salt and snow mingled. Then he shouted orders to the men on the walls, voice ringing above the storm like a gong of iron and ice. And the work of holding Winterfell began again. This time not merely for the Kraken, nor the wolf, but for both entwined, binding the future of a North whose tale had only just begun. Ka. The rain hammered Winterfell's slate roofs, as if determined to carve pathways to the stone beneath, each drop a drumbeat heralding trouble. From the southeast parapet, Theon watched the torchlit tide of the Lannister Frey host, royal just beyond bowshot. Ranks of men in crimson cloaks gone black with wet, spear points pricking sky, banners of gold and gray plastered to poles. Their siege train lurked like crouched beasts. Spidery trebuchets shrouded in soaked canvas, oxen stamping restlessly in mud. Somewhere among that sea lounged Sir Adam Marbrand, famed for setting riverlands aflame, and Sir Ryman Frey, whose breath Theon imagined stank of sour wine and an older man's cowardice. They were fewer than rumor promised, perhaps 800, half plagued by limp banners and thinner lines than the thunder suggested. Yet still enough to gnaw at Winterfell's walls if siege dragged past summer's first petals. Below in the outer yard men bustled, torchlight flickering across helms patched with rust and fresh-forged plates alike. Ironborn and Northmen stood shoulder to shoulder, passing stones for the catapults. Tension humming in the rhythm of their movements. Hack-jawed Loren barked orders, his booming voice splitting the storm. At the smithy Micken's apprentices quenched arrowheads in smoky troughs, sparks mingling with rain mist. The air smelled of wet leather, hot pitch, and dread throttled into readiness. Inside the great keep Bran Stark sat before a table big as a skiff, maps unfurled like pale skins. Mira balanced behind him, spear butt whispering against flagstones, while Jojen traced slow circles around the damp edges of candle flame, muttering fragments only the fire seemed to grasp. Theon strode in trailing raindrops. Bran raised grave eyes that seemed to see through rain and stone alike. They encamp in the low ground, Theon reported, voice husked from shouting across wind. Walls and weather favor us, but lions scarcely prowl alone. Scouts will probe. Sappers dig. Trebuchets can fling stone but not courage, Bran replied, fingers grazing carved ridges of the map. If you break their heart, soldiers scatter like autumn leaves. Easier said than bled, Theon murmured. Yet a flicker of frost-lipped resolve danced in him. It was odd to take counsel from a crippled boy yet feel taller for it. They bent over the parchment long into the gale-tossed night, planning patterns of counterfire, hidden sally ports, torches soaked in whale oil to ignite siege towers. Bran whispered of subterranean passages once used by laborers to haul quarried blocks. Theon ordered those mouths sealed by dawn save one, a slender throat of tunnel he meant to turn against the besiegers. By gray first light horns brayed 3 notes across the drenched fields. Parley dodadam. Theon donned storm-black ringmail. Over it a half-cloak dyed in wolf gray trimmed with kraken gold. Asha stalked at his side clad in new blade-forged mail, grin fierce as surf on rocks. With them rode Master Luwin, slate eyes bright behind droplets. At the midpoint between wall and host, they halted beneath a sagging war truce banner. Ser Adam Marbrand emerged, copper hair plastered to brow, scale armor burnished though streaked in mire. Beside him waddled Ser Ryman Frey, jowls quivering with every step. Marbrand's salute was crisp despite rain. "Lord Greyjoy, permit me the courtesy of addressing you so. King Joffrey requires restitution for atrocities committed by you and yours against faithful subjects of the realm." He unrolled a scroll. Words blurred by water, but the cadence rang rehearsed. "Treason, murder of Sir Roderick Castle, seizure of royal fief, harboring of traitor wolves. Surrender this castle, its inhabitants, and yourself for royal judgment. In exchange, leniency may be extended. Chains of gilded iron, a black cell rather than an unmarked grave." Bendo. Behind Marbrand the army seemed to lean forward, thousands of eyes prying at Theon's poise. Rain sheeted off his brow. He let a heartbeat pass, two, letting silence weigh heavier than Marbrand's threats. Then he spoke. "Tell your boy king that Winterfell stands neither for sale nor surrender. We hold by blood older than Baratheon lies and Lannister gold alike. You waste men beneath these walls. Each corpse will join the damp earth that sucks at your boots now." Ryman Frey sniffed. Fine words for a squid who slithered through cracks to claim what true lords could not hold. Asha's laugh barked sharp. "And still hold, despite lion roars and Frey bleats. Return to your camp, old sheep." Marbrand's coppery brows knit. "Your defiance damns the innocent within." Theon's gaze drifted to the battlements where Bran watched from a high vantage. Summer's shadow flicking. "The boy you deem traitor is rightful heir of this keep. Stand aside, you preserve honor. Press on, you drench it in shame." Rain gusted, snapping the truce banner. Marbrand's jaw flexed. 3 days, he pronounced. 8 dawn on the 4th, the lion will tear stone. He wheeled his charger, Frey squelched after, muttering. Back through Torrent Theon rode. At the gatehouse archers raised crossbows to salute, some in squid ink green, others stark gray. He ordered barrels of pitch dragged to the outer wall walks, every arrow fletched with linen dipped in pine tar. "Night will be darkest just before their fear peaks," he told Lauren. "Let the sky burn." He met Bran in the Godswood, where rain fell gentler through budding branches. Smell of wet earth mingled with hot spring steam curling from mossy pools. Bran's cloak soaked his shoulders, but he seemed to welcome the drizzle. "They count on your doubts," Bran said quietly. "Break their faith in that, and you break their siege." Theon knelt beside the heart tree, memory of Ned Stark's quiet prayers, sudden and sharp. He was no Stark, yet the red leaves whispered still. What breaks them faster? Fear of burning towers, or knowledge the wolves they chase already roam inside dreams? Bran closed his eyes. Warg trickery may fell small foes. Armies answer to steel, and so will give them steel. Theon rose, splashed through puddles toward the armory, where Asha prepared her fiercest. Days thrummed with frantic labor. On the first morning, archers loosed ranging shots that thudded into enemy pavises. On the second, dusk Winterfell's catapults hurled barrels of glass shard ale at supply wagons, igniting showers of flame when torches struck. Theon saved the old stone trebuchet for night 3, its counterweight filled with lead scrap, lobbing a single screaming projectile that flattened a half-built siege tower, splinters scattering like crows. Each blow stung lion pride, but Marbrand's host hunkered behind shield walls, endured, edged closer. Inside, tension simmered. Ironborn boasted, but some whispered of Father Balin's levy, of Pike's summons unheeded. Stark men eyed Kraken comrades, old wounds twitching. Word filtered that Dagmar's patrol glimpsed Bolton riders skulking near the Barrowlands, perhaps sniffing chance to strike whoever bled first. On the eve of the 3rd day, Theon convened captains in the torchlit cellar beneath the kitchen, the deepest room still dry. Water drummed overhead like distant drums. He laid out a daring plan. A sortie at moonless midnight through the old quarry tunnel Bran had revealed, aimed not at the main host, but at the trebuchets themselves. Destroy the war machines, the siege would wither, supplies already pinched, morale thinner than banners. Lauren volunteered first, grin wolf-toothed. Bethany Coldwater claimed second spear. Asha insisted on leading, though Theon argued. In the end they agreed to stride together, each to guard the other's shadow. 20 picked men readied, 10 Ironborn silent as sea snakes, 10 Northmen sworn to House Tallheart. Black grease smeared their helms, padding muffled mail clinks. They shared flasks of poppy seeds to dull nerve and chain rust. Midnight crept with cat-footed hush, clouds smothered stars. In the crypts, they unscrewed the rusted grate covering the forgotten service shaft, hauling it aside on oiled rollers. The passage sloped downward, breath hot with trapped earth. Torches were forbidden. Bran had described branchings by memory. Left where the floor inclines, then right at the weeping stalactite. Summer prowled with them to the threshold, nose wrinkling, but obeyed when Bran whispered stay. They crawled single file, lantern shutters tucked to slits, damp walls closing like jaws. After twisting journey they reached a mossy breach opening behind a screen of brambles at the base of the outer ridge, a mile from the Lannister perimeter. Rain masked their emergence. Thunder disguised metal knocks as Loren levered the last rusted bolt. Through curtains of drizzle, they advanced. The muddy plain sprawled in fitful torch glow. Shapes of sentry fires, silhouettes of dozing pikemen, hulks of siege towers, draped in tarpaulins like giant spiders' victims. Theon's heart thudded. They skirted a patrol, paused beneath the shadow of a supply cart. Asha whispered counts. The trebuchets, 5 in a row, towering stiff-framed against cloud-scraped night. Loren produced clay pots of thick whale oil pitch. Bethany's Tallheart archers fitted hemp fuses spattered in lampblack. Each man placed charges at crucial joints, counterweight arms, winch posts, rope coils, soaked to drink flame. A cry rang suddenly. Sentinel glimpsed movement. Arrow hissed. Northmen yelped, thudded to knees. The camp roared awake. Theon slashed fuse tips alight, hurled onto oil-slick beams. Fire flared neon against night. Ironborn howled, hacking at tarcloth coverings. Sparks raced upward. Back to the ridge, Theon shouted, parry spinning a spear thrust. Asha drove a dagger into a mail gap, booted foe aside. Red light leapt from trebuchets as timbers erupted, flames licking rain. Counterweights groaned, then cracked. A massive arm sagged, dragging fire-rimed rope into mud like thrashing serpent. Men sprinted for the tunnel mouth, arrows buzzing. Loren Bard shouldered through brush. Bethany dragged the wounded archer. Blood-dappled droplet trails. Hooves thundered behind. Lannister outriders. Theon seized a downed shield painted with Frey towers, whirled to block swipe, then retaliated with a brutal upward cut. Rider toppled. Horse reared screaming. Within breath, they reached the cleft. Dove. The wounded Tallheart sobbed as comrades tugged him along. Torches flickered behind, but none dared follow into black throat. They slithered up dank slope, lungs heaving, emerging via the grate just before dawn. Behind them, faint booms echoed as trebuchet frames collapsed. Flame meeting stored pitch. At sunrise, Theon ascended ramparts. Below, the besiegers' camp churned in chaos. Charred wrecks still smoldered, smoke pillars twisting into morning breeze. Men scrambled to pry blackened beams off crushed comrades, oxen stampeded, shouted orders clashed. Winterfell's archers loosed ragged volleys to harry salvage crews. Marburn's countermove came swift by afternoon. Shields advanced in testudo, covering sappers bearing tools for trenches. But their morale rattled. By dusk the assault faltered when the forward trench flooded from sudden cloudburst, drowning half-finished stakes. In the great hall, feast tables bore simple fare, yet spirits rose. Even Maester Luwin allowed a smile as he changed bandages on the wounded. Bran listened to reports with solemn satisfaction. When Theon described the burning trebuchets, the boy's mouth quirked in something near approval. "Fear is a night mist," he said quietly. "You show them dawn without siege engines. They doubt every shadow hence." Theon nodded, though night still lengthened behind his eyes. This victory bought time, not peace. Supplies among the enemy could last weeks despite losses, and a new train might march from the Twins. Worse, Rumor spoke of Roose Bolton himself riding north, banners pale and pink, perhaps to claim what his bastard could not. Yet fortune whispered too. Scouts reported Frey division. Rymon's cousin Black Walder openly derided the siege cost. Others grumbled about missed wedding spoils at the twins. Theon hatched a seedling plot, turned Frey against Lyon, split their camp with distrust. He penned a letter in fine Lannister gold ink, retrieved from Marbrand's fallen courier, a forged missive from Cersei to Rymon, promising Walder Frey lordship over Winterfell once traitors were purged. Bethany's swiftest rider slipped past pickets at moonrise, depositing the scroll where Black Walder's spies would uncover it. 2 nights later, shouts echoed from enemy tents. Torchlight flashed steel. A minor brawl erupted between Frey and Lyon cohorts. Theon watched from parapets with grim amusement. Each fracture, a vein spidering through stone. But cracks threatened within Winterfell too. Kyra discovered a Stark sergeant spreading whispers that Greyjoy would hand Bran to Pike for a bag of silvers. Asha nailed the man's tongue to the stocks at dawn. Hissed warnings quenched murmurs, yet tension smoldered. Near the end of the first siege week, the sky cleared cobalt. Wind dropped, and Winterfell twitched at stillness. Theon sensed a calm, not of respite, but reckoning. At midday, a single horn blast from the south gate proclaimed envoy. A lone rider approached under fresh-sewn white banner quartered with black. As he drew closer, men muttered. The rider bore the flayed man of House Bolton. He halted just beyond arrow range, helmet removed to reveal pale, smiling face, speckled with pink scars. A younger cousin, perhaps. Not Ramsay reborn, but kin. He called out in voice polite as prayer. Lord Greyjoy, I am Sir Harry's of the Dreadfort. My Lord Roose offers terms. Open your gates to his garrison, and he will relieve you of the lion's yoke, confirm your lordship under Stark stewardship, and spare every soul behind your walls. Refuse, and he shall join Lannister steel to raise you. Beowul. A hush blanketed parapets. Only gull cry pierced. Theon stepped forward, voice carrying. Bolton mercy flays alike friend and foe. I decline. Sir Harris bowed from the saddle, uncanny smile never waning. Then may your kraken skin keep warmth when northern winds peel it. He turned and trotted away. That eve Bran summoned Theon to the Broken Tower's library, where dust motes danced in lantern hush. Hunched by a roll of tanned vellum lay Hodor, big hands cradling a cask of honeymead. Jojen traced finger along ancient runes, while Mira sharpened knife. Bran regarded Theon somberly. Bolton will not parley long, the boy said. He plays fox amid hounds, allying with lion now, kraken next perhaps. He means to claim Winterfell whichever side bleeds first. And how do we foil a fox? Theon asked. Outfox him, Bran whispered. He unfurled a sheet depicting the Dreadfort march routes, added from memory. His strength lies not in numbers but dread. Strip dread, his men falter. My dreams show a man beneath flayed banners hiding fear of fire. Fire again. Theon's mind leapt to pitch barrels lined along inner causeway, to casks of black powder father sent. A plan ignited. Bait Bolton into alliance meeting with Marbrand at Camp Center. Sabotage the parley with flames and thunder. Blame treachery. Watch coalition fracture. Dangerous, but war rarely coddles the bold. He would need stealth, timing, and a scapegoat. Asha heard his scheme next dawn, eyes bright with thrill. A wedding of fox and lion undone by kraken mischief, she said. I'll drink to that. Preparations spun like loomed shuttles. Dagmar oversaw assembling 2 small casks of black powder into a wine barrel stamped with Reach grapes. Mikken forged a hollow false bung fitted with fuses thin as spider silk. Lewin brewed lantern oil tinted to appear fine Lysine arbor. Lauren practiced stilted Frey dialect, since he would don a stolen Frey cloak to slip barrel into enemy wine stores during night confusion. That confusion required spark. A truce meeting arranged ostensibly by Bolton to coax Lyon and Frey commanders into joint assault. Theon forged a letter under Bolton's seal, dispatched via enemy deserter wooed with coin. Message proposed on moot council, 3 nights hence in Bolton Pavilion. Each party to bring only 10 armsmen. Marbrand, desperate after trebuchet loss, accepted. Frey captains acquiesced, wary yet lured by promise of shared spoils. Roose Bolton's reply remained unknown, but spies glimpsed new pink banners entering camp, and Theon wagered Bolton could not resist staging magnanimous mediator. Night of the Moot, a creeping fog-shrouded world in whisper white. Lauren, dyed hair pale with ash, guided a mule cart, laden in straw, to a rear supply trench flagged Frey. Guards waved him past after board inspection. At unseen signal he twisted fuse, hopping off cart as mule plodded onward. He melted into mist. Within Bolton, grand tent, massive braziers glowed. Rue's pale gaze slithered across gathered captains, Marbrand bronze-bearded, Ryman Frey fidgeting, Black Walder sneering. Circlet of steel circled Bolton's bladed shoulders, his bastard cousins flanked like silent gargoyles. They sipped wine. Fine arbor decanted from barrel newly tapped. Outside, pickets muttered about foul smoke from cook fires. At Winterfell, Theon stood on highest tower, fuse match in hand, timing the exhale of distant watchfires. When tower bell told third note to mark dogwatch, he struck flint to rope of slow-burn pitch that vanished into tunnel slits, carrying spark to powder within barrel miles away. An alchemist trick Leuven once cautioned a child never to attempt. Flame crawled thread unseen beneath soil, devoured cunning oils before biting black powder. Detonation. Split night. An orange fist punched above the enemy camp, tent flaps whirling like charred petals, shockwave flattening banners. Thunder rolled back from hills. Fires leapt ravenous along canvas rows. Theon's heart slammed. From walls Winterfell's men whooped, some stunned to prayer. Down among conflagration, chaos reigned. Lions shouted Frey treachery. Freys shrieked Bolton lied. A second smaller blast. Powder crates near the cook trenches, threw sparks across hay-piled ballista. Horses screamed, tore free, trampling men. Arrows cut silhouette shapes as frightened sentries loosed at any moving blur. Roose Bolton emerged from smoking ruin of pavilion. Half cloak in flames. He lived. Theon cursed softly, but his eyes saw only betrayal. He bellowed for his crimson guard to seize Freys. Lions misread as charge. Steel rang in full melee. Seeing confusion, Theon signaled. Winterfell's main gate opened. A contingent of 50 mounted reavers, half kraken, half stark outriders, thundered forth, torches streaming sparks. They circled enemy camp edges, set alight wagon clusters of grain, captured stragglers, cut stakes of unraised rams. Not battle, but surgical bleeding. By sunrise, Siege lines lay in tatters. Marbrand's banner fled south with less than 200, leaving ballast of dead and smoldering lumber. Freys turned on Freys in blame. Black Walder limped into fields with eyes swollen, swore vengeance on Ryman. Bolton's forces withdrew northeast, licking wounds, perhaps to plot darker retribution. Winterfell's garrison returned triumphant, cheers echoing off towers. Theon stood before them in muddy courtyard, sword high. Rain had ended. Dawn light painted stones honey gold. He spoke not of victory by cunning flame, but of stout hearts and unity. Bran watched from dais beneath direwolf tapestry, summer sprawling content. Even skeptical Northmen roared acclaim. After feasting, Theon slipped away to ramparts, watched clouds feather against pale sky. Footsteps padded. Bran wheeled beside, Mira pushing with calm strength. "It won't end here," Bran said. "I know," Theon answered. "But each day, we hold, writes new runes upon North memory. Eventually, those runes read. Home." Bran's hand, small, scarred from travel, rested on parapet. Homes are more than walls. They are stories kept alive. Mensa D. "Then tell yours," Theon whispered, "and I'll guard the ink." Below, small folk dragged charred timbers from fields, iron-born smiths already eyeing salvage. Asha's laugh carried across yard as she wagered daggers with tall hard archers. Somewhere Lewin drafted letters. News to Manderley, to Barrowton. Perhaps to Robb Stark if ravens found him. Though what message, Theon wondered, could bridge that gulf now? Nightfall again. In his chambers, Theon peeled damp shirt, muscles striped with bruise from sortie. In candlelight he eyed scars, marks of Pike's harsh training, of sea reavings, of Winterfell's long claim upon him. Kyra slept curled amid furs, but he felt another presence. The castle itself, breathing through stones, accepting yet, testing still. He dreamt of waves beating ice floes, kraken tentacles, entwining direwolf, not in death, but in anchor. When gale roared he woke, yet breeze was gentle, window shutters rattling only lightly. Perhaps dream had been no warning, but vow. Spring ripened. Tinder brown buds greened, black earth warmed. Small folk sowed barley under guard of mixed patrols. White Harbor emissaries arrived bearing sealed contracts ratifying trade. Theon countersigned, witnessed by Bran and Maester alike. Glover men rode in from Deepwood with wagons of dried fruit, curious to see kraken rule that did not ravage. Bolton ravens circled, but did not land. One evening, Dagmar escorted a lean figure into hall. Rickon Stark, wild-haired, cheeks smudged, eyes bright with defiant fire. At his heels padded Shaggy Dog, black as new moon, teeth flashing. They had been discovered near last hearth stealing turnips. The Umbers, half convinced of rumors, spared them and sent escort. When Bran and Rickon embraced wordlessly, joy cracked stone silence. Even hardened reavers blinked away something like respect. With both wolf pups within, Theon convened moot of northern minor houses. Lady Hornwood came hobbling with cane. Tall hearts stood stalwart. Barrowton sent steward. They gathered under candlelit cavern of the great hall. Above them hung banners newly stitched. Direwolf and kraken coiled in mutual grasp beneath motto old yet reborn. We guard together. Theon addressed assembly, voice steady as tide. He would stand as protector until boys reached majority. Northern laws would govern, iron-born sea rights would supply trade, taxes fixed, justice blended. He spoke of siege repelled, of Bolton treachery revealed, of Southron wars devouring realm, while North could sow peace. Bran then raised shaky arms, proclaiming Theon Greyjoy Lord Regent of Winterfell, witness by gods and men, until such time as Bran Stark took his rightful seat. The hall thundered acclamation. Even skeptical Lady Hornwood dipped her chin. In the weeks that followed, masons mended breachstones, carpenters raised new stables. Children learned to swim in hot springs again. Summer and Shaggy Dog chased each other through budding orchards, guardians of laughter. Yet Horizon remained restless. Envoys from Pike arrived bearing news. Balon drowned upon rocks, urine crowned at Kingsmoot, sails of black wings spreading. The new king commanded all kraken to return or be named Oathbreakers. Theon read letter thrice, flame of old fear flickering. But he folded parchment, set it in brazier, paper curled, words flew upward in sparks. Later he knelt before the heart tree beside Bran. Red leaves whispered in warm breeze. Sea calls, he murmured. Bran's reply was soft. And land answers. Theon exhaled salt-tinged air no sea touched. I am of both. Then be bridge. Bran laid small palm on root, gnarled like ancient bone. Where sea and stone meet, storms temper cliffs. You have weathered the test. Distant horns echoed. Scouts sighting riders on southern road, dusty, bannerless, weary. Perhaps peace envoys at last, or new foes. Theon rose, brushed leaves from knees. More storms, he said. More shores, Bran answered. Together, they turned toward ramparts to greet whatever tide next rolled. Winterfell lit behind them in amber glow of evening. A fortress no longer merely occupied, but alive with the interwoven breath of wolf and kraken, thrum of roots and roar of surf, beating as one heart in the still uncertain dawn of the North's new chapter.